You guys made me question this, but I don't know how much this movie's made. But I do know this number. It is the highest grossing film of all time in Mexico.
But is that for the weekend or of all time?
So I double checked it. I said this yesterday and you had me question myself. It is of all time. And here's why. This movie came out October 27th in Mexico.
Wow.
I don't know if that was the international release, but it came out. Oh, is that Day of the Dead?
Well, it's actually like November, the beginning of November, but it's like right before that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was the idea, is that it's had a month ahead of us, which is why it's had time to gain that much revenue.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And it's very culturally accurate. So I think that's also another thing that attracts
let's
people
get
who
into
are
that.
Mexican.
What were your overall feelings? Does anybody have a
Love it.
Yeah.
Loved it. It is a great Pixar film, and Pixar already has a level of quality to their films. So to say it is a great Pixar film is very high praise, because they're already very thorough in their storytelling and their animation. Some of the shots in this movie are just blows
Beautiful.
me away.
It reminded me, as far as the shots, of What Dreams May Come. We mentioned this earlier. This is why we have an empty seat, because we have generally another person sitting there, but he's gone.
Kevin.
Kevin.
But I think he brought up, or somebody brought up, What Dreams May Come, Robin Williams' film from the 90s, I'm going to guess. And it reminded me a lot of it. It's this pretty kind of like, it's a film about like what heaven and hell look like. And they painted a beautiful picture with it. And Coco actually has some like similar shots. I don't know if you remember, or if anybody's seen this movie.
It's been a
I
while.
haven't.
I mean,
I need to watch it.
I agree that it's like that in the fact that there's a lot of colors.
Yeah.
Other than that, I disagree with that.
Really?
Yeah.
It's got that flowery, painty kind of feel, though, too.
It looks sort of like an impressionist painting.
Yeah.
Which is, that's the thing about it. And What Dreams May Come is that his heaven is like an impressionist painting, which is kind of shitty because he just has to walk around in paint.
How'd you feel about Coco?
I liked it. It's not my favorite Pixar movie. The only issue that it was a little bit more structured and it stuck a little bit more to the typical like screenplay format, and I could kind of predict where it was going. But I guess that's probably been the case. Are we good?
We're good.
Did we leave? I guess that's probably been the case with Pixar movies more and more, because as they've been more and more influenced by Disney, I think Disney is very much about having a formula and a structure that's been proven time and time again, because they don't want to take risks, because
It's refined.
Yeah, it's been refined, and they know people in Mexico or America or China will respond to that formula. So that was my only kind of complaint, was that it felt like it was a little bit more formulaic than previous Pixar movies, and
That's interesting. I didn't think that. I feel like I was like, at every turn I was a little surprised. I did not know that the whole movie was going to be him in this alternative death world.
Land of the Dead.
I did not know that, especially when he went in there. I thought he was going to go, spoilers, I guess we should say, that he went into the altar of his
Well, it's a mausoleum, right?
mausoleum, to grab the guitar, and then I thought we would end up back, at the mariachi square or whatever it was called. I hope that's what it's called, please. God,
I think
let it be.
they say I found him in Mariachi Square.
Right, but then all of a
the
sudden he's
plaza.
in a dead world. Yeah.
I mean, I watched the trailer, so I knew it was going to be like I felt like that's where it was going to take place mostly. Not to insult you,
Sure.
but I'm insulting you.
Did it remind you also, maybe it's just the skeletons, but of Nightmare Before Christmas?
A little bit.
A little bit. I got more of a Beetlejuice vibe, just because they added in bureaucracy and lines and like how to pass into the nether realm. It's not so easy, and they had the whole conceit of the friend Hector that Miguel makes. He needs to get into our world just once. And he needs his photo. I thought that was a really neat approach to the beliefs of these people. And like, we put up their photos on the Day of the Dead, and that's their chance to come across to our world and be with us, you know, one more time.
Yeah, as far as being like culturally sensitive in that aspect, sure, I could see that.
Yeah.
I don't subscribe to that, but I get
Oh,
it.
sure.
Neither do I, but
It's going to
I get
confuse
it.
a lot of children, I think, as to what the afterlife or what ideas of the afterlife.
Right.
Which could be a
I
problem.
mean, I don't care about what children think.
Yeah,
but,
whatever. God.
I absolutely can't.
Because I mean, I don't, only because children are told a lot of things when they're
Right.
young, and they don't necessarily believe those things when they grow up. I was told a lot of things about the way the world works and religion and all
Let
those
me tell you
things.
about being a Catholic.
And I'm now an atheist, so that can just show you that
Right.
it doesn't really matter.
But it's still like, I mean, I think it's interesting how they approached the subject
Yeah.
matter, because it's like, I mean, this isn't the first time that Pixar movies have dealt with death,
Mm-hmm.
obviously. But they're like delving into like, and I mean, it's just interesting to see like, I thought about that a couple of times. It's like, what are kids gonna leave this movie? Like, what's gonna be their takeaway? Like,
I was
is
thinking
this-
about that a lot.
Is this like,
Yeah.
are they going to leave being like, oh, well, that's just like, this is all fantasy and it's scripted and it's a story? Or is like, there might be, or probably will be, a lot of kids that are like, oh, well, that's like what
I'll bet you're right.
Afterlife is.
Also problematic to me, which, I mean, it's not necessarily problematic, but can be, is that family is like the most important thing in the world. And what if your family is terrible? What if they're like really bad people?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, they're the main thing of this movie was, family is important. Respect where you came from. But yeah, I mean, there will be people who come from either, you know, broken homes or never knew their real family, that sort of thing.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with Jess. It just like it puts this like lock and key on this is the most important thing. in the
Right.
world.
And
that
in
could be a
Mexican
problem.
culture, it's true. Family is very important.
Right.
And I can see how, you know, that's a big message in this movie, and why it's a big message. But I do think that it can be problematic if your family's a bunch of drunks, or if they have a bunch of issues and they treat you terribly. I mean, I think you can just as easily make your own family with friends
Right.
or people who treat you really well, versus like just relying on people who are blood related. And also that brings up adoption too. Like, what if you're adopted?
Right.
That's still your family. You know?
And that's one of the twists in this movie again is something else I didn't expect is that this friend of his, or this guy that's helping him out, ends up being his dad. And that was another unexpected thing for me. I did
saw
not.
that.
You saw that come in a mile away?
I saw that coming too.
I knew De La Cruz was going to be evil. I knew he was going to be
Yeah,
the
I knew
bad
that,
guy.
but I didn't know the other guy was going to be his father.
And then there's like, oh, they're actually partners, and then he's like, oh,
Yeah.
I mean, not from the get-go, I didn't think that. But like, as
Yeah.
it progressed, I was like, okay,
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I see what's happening. And it's like, like, I started thinking that was...
Right.
There's going to be a twist, and that's probably what it was going to be, because it was the character that he had connected to the most.
Right.
Right. I was talking about another Disney film during Screen Source earlier that I thought Doctor Strange was the prettiest of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This might be the prettiest Disney Pixar film.
See that?
It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's
beautiful.
gorgeous. And you and I like turned to each other when they got dropped into the water hole,
Yeah.
and we're like, that water is insane.
I mean, they perfected water in like Nemo,
Yeah.
and they've just been further
so
making
pretty.
it's
so I
more
can't-
beautiful than actual water at this point. It's just they know how to do water.
And another big
really
problem
well.
in CGI and animation is been hair. And I noticed the hair in this film too was really well done.
I remember seeing a Pixar, I don't know if it was a short documentary or something leading up to one of their movies, but they were talking about how every movie for them is a project in something they haven't really done well before.
Yeah, they're pushing forward technology.
Yeah, like every movie is like, we're really going to focus on skin tones or how because if you think about it, the first handful of Pixar movies didn't really have humans as main
Toy
characters.
Story, the first one.
Bugs
Yeah.
Life.
Too hard.
And so, yeah, like they've made, like, we're really going to focus. I think with Monsters, Inc., they were like, we're really going to focus on hair because that's really been a problem. So,
Right.
like, Sully and everything, all these monsters. So
Finding
it would,
Nemo was water.
right.
lights.
I would be interested to see, like, what their, like, thing, well, for every movie, like, what project were they like, in this movie, we need to tackle this, fill in the blank.
I don't know if they've said it, but for this one, Justin and I talked about this yesterday. The skin, especially on the grandmother. Oh my god!
Yeah,
that looked like real.
So
it looked like a grandmother.
Yeah. Authentic grandmother skin.
I definitely got very emotional. It made me cry several times. There was a part kind of in the middle of the movie, I think, where, you know, the little boy is like, you don't support me. And that's what family is supposed to do. You're supposed to support me in what I want to do, my dreams. And my dreams are to be a musician. And I really appreciated that, because I think a lot of times parents, not surprisingly, will want their kids to do exactly what they did and be exactly like them. And
that was a good message.
But I think it's a good message to say, like, your kids are not automatically going to be exactly like you, and you should be okay with that. You should support them in what they want to do in life. Like, I think,
he actually overtly says in the movie, like, you're my family, you're supposed to support me. And it's not like he was asking for the support to like do drugs or
right.
He like just wanted to play music.
Right.
And I think that was a really good message.
He had a good argument.
Yeah. Of all of the things to take away, that was one of my favorites. Is that he had his kind of own goal. He was an independent person and the black sheep in the family. And all
he
that.
built a guitar from, like, if you look at it, the nails were the frets and everything. I will say, as a guitar player, like,
did you see the finger movement?
All of them were actual chords.
Perfect,
You could look at this movie and figure out how to play the songs. That's how, and that's very rare for animation, because usually it's like going to fucking Chuck E. Cheese and the hand just goes up and down the fretboard.
And even his strumming and picking.
Yeah, everything was literally note for note. Right, like that was a C chord, that was a G added ninth chord.
How did you feel about the music in this film?
It was beautiful, and I mean,
it wasn't all original. So says Jessica, at least.
Yeah, I think some of the traditional mariachi songs, but I think they treated that very respectfully, and it is. A handful of years ago, I helped out a film director. Actually, oddly enough, the guy who directed Captain Ron, of all movies. Tom Earhart, I believe his name is. Okay. But he lives here at least part of the time, and he was doing a small documentary about a annual mariachi conference that comes to UNM. And I helped out with sound with that one. And it is kids of all ages and adults, but like the most mariachi groups you've ever seen in one place. They're just swarming. They'll have the outfits and the guitars are all tuning up and playing songs, and they have their culture has a relationship to this music that rivals any other nationality.
Right.
Like, it's very unique. Their love and how it is woven into their family and how they grew up. And it means
food and music is very important.
It means the world to them that they get to play this music. And usually, you know, I've lived my entire life around New Mexico, and usually you just see mariachi at, you know, some Mexican restaurants while eating guacamole. And so to really see these people just put everything they have into this music, it is, I think they really treated what it's like to be Mexican and in love with this music. I think they did it very well.
I think they did too. I have a special connection to one of the songs that the great great grandmother, the one he sees in Land of the Dead, sings, because she's accidentally like put up on stage. And I saw Lila Downs, who's a kind of a prolific Mexican and Irish actually singer, perform that at Disney Hall in LA, and oh my god, it was just so beautiful. The song about La Llorona is what the song was, but I've known that song for pretty much my whole life.
But the rest of them were probably more original.
The other ones were more original. That was one of the only songs I could pick out that was not original.
So what did you guys think about the acting?
I thought it was really good.
Yeah, I mean
what do you mean the acting?
Did you like the voice acting?
Oh,
which is acting?
Yeah, absolutely. And I have all the respect in the world for voice actors. They have to do a lot with just their voice.
Yeah.
And they got a good kid. I don't know any of these actors, really. I mean, Cheech Marin was in there somewhere. Yeah. Or John Ratzenberg was in there and somewhere because it's Pixar.
Gael Garcia Bernal.
He was Hector. And I really like him. And then the little boy, this is kind of his breakout role.
What's his name?
His name is Anthony Gonzalez. And he does all the singing and voice acting for his character.
One thing I really like that Pixar does mostly, not exclusively, but they still cast like good voice actors and not just celebrities.
Yep.
Julia Roberts and The Rock. Yeah.
The Lion King. I think these live action ones is a change though, because the Lion King cast reveal, none of them are voice actor proper.
Well,
they're actors.
They're doing like motion capture and stuff, so I understand
I get
why that might be the thing. And but even we watched the trailer for that movie, like Fernando or Ferdinand or whatever.
Yeah.
The Bull.
The Bull,
with
and
John
it's just
Cena.
Peyton Manning. Who the
whole
fuck cares?
Selling of it is just John Cena being like, "Look, it's me, John Cena.
Literally
it's
him
me
on screen.
Me
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
I made a movie." And like,
Not to put too fine a
how
point
they're-
on it, but yeah,
But it's
John
like-
Cena's in this movie.
and it's
I
that's
liked
like half of
being
the
in this
trailer
movie.
is just him talking about this movie, and so they can sell to fans of John Cena.
Yeah.
And it's just becoming more and more of a thing where it used to be that animated movies had no recognizable talent whatsoever, and it was a very specific specific technique and talent that certain people had, and if you didn't have it, then you weren't cast. But now it's not that Gael Garcia Bernal isn't famous in his own regard, but that's how it typically. None of the advertising has been Gael Garcia Bernal in this movie.
Yeah, and big old letters. Yeah,
right. And they tend to cast people who are not like marketable. Like Gael Garcia Bernal is a known name, but he's not like somebody who most people would know. Like maybe
he doesn't have the John Cena following.
Right.
Yeah.
He would, maybe I kind of am surprised that he hasn't gone further with his career. That like, because there's that movie Y Tu Mama Tambien. Has anybody watched?
Yeah, it's a big popular one. I haven't watched it.
Right.
But yeah,
I have.
Him and
It's
Diego
good.
Luna, and like we're both in it, and it seemed like Gael Garcia Bernal was like running away with the who's the most famous person from that movie. But now Diego Luna, being in like Rogue One and a number of others, is like making a comeback. It seems like he's almost more popular now. But anyway, I appreciated that the talent was just voice talent, not just
who's ever hot at the time.
And it's specific. It's almost it's an all Mexican cast.
It's almost all Mexican.
Except for John Ratzenberger,
Right.
Who has to be in there because it's Pixar.
Right. But then you got Benjamin Bratt is Ernesto de la Cruz, and then you've got I think Gabriel Iglesias, who's a
I saw his
comedian.
name in there,
He's like the clerk, one of the clerks.
Gabriel Iglesias, is he related to?
I don't know. All I know is
He's
he's a comedian, right?
Oh, Gabriel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you were talking about how they picked the right voice for the part,
Right.
not the one of my
T. Nelson.
well, for The Incredibles, they got Craig T. Nelson out of
Coach.
Yeah, Coach. Holly Hunter, Sarah Vowell of This American Life did the daughter. One of the best voice choices. It was so perfect. So yeah, Pixar's.
Yeah,
awesome.
I really like that they are getting Mexican actors to play the voices. They did that for Moana as well, because all the actors pretty much were like Pacific Islander, even The Rock is, and so I thought that was really cool. I think it's really great that they're doing that.
And this is first Disney, at least Disney Pixar, first like Latin-based film, right? And then you mentioned yesterday that the Disney has tapped that
a little bit. There's I believe it's a short, Donald Duck short, from many years ago called Los Caballeros, and it's notable for its time. I don't think I've ever seen it. But
I always remember the cover. They have the three sombreros.
Yeah, it's like Donald and these two birds, and
who are less popular,
right? Probably just for that cartoon they were made, but
right. And then Disney did Princess and the Frog, 2D animated film.
Pocahontas.
Yeah.
Mulan. That was
Mulan. Yes.
And for Pocahontas they used Native American actors also. So interesting.
Yeah. but starring Mel Gibson.
I know. Well, he played a white guy though.
And I'm pretty sure the voice actor. I'm pretty sure
before
the voice
everything went down.
For Pocahontas was not white.
No, she was Native.
Was she?
She's a very famous Native American actress.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think before we get into like the end of the film and how like how we felt afterwards, I think we should go back to the beginning and talk about Frozen.
The real reason I went let's get some white people on these cartoons.
So what happened?
So Pixar. Every Pixar movie has a short in front of it, and it kind of it's like an old timey movie thing. Like have a short before the movie.
The best ones being the chess game before Toy Story, I believe.
Oh, that was so good.
What was it?
Actually, before A Bug's Life.
Oh, okay.
Was it Tin Toy before Toy Story? Because that Tin Toy was one of the first things they ever did.
I think that was true.
Or maybe Luxo Jr.
The lamp, I think, was the very first
Luxo.
one. I remember
Luxo Jr.
Yeah.
Anyway, so COCO had Olaf's Frozen
Olaf's holiday adventure,
Christmas adventure. Yeah, some Christmas bullshit.
Another thing I want
Guys,
to
it was
point out
bad.
in all of this was, did you notice how meticulously they did not touch upon any of any Christian iconography or ideology in both the Frozen short and in
Nope.
Whoa.
In Coco?
In Coco.
Yeah, there was a cross on the wall in Grandma's room.
Okay, there was a cross on a wall, which is like, but if this had been made even like 20 years ago or 15 years ago, not to mention, any time before that, like if you want to like really be taken out of the current moment, watch any movie from like the 1950s or 40s and how they're all God and Jesus find their way into them at some point, like, and it becomes very much like, well, you're an idiot, God, and it's like, like, God,
direct
of course,
quote.
Jesus, and it's just, and it's interesting to me that both this movie, the Frozen thing, which was freaking terrible, but it was all about the Yule Festival, right? It wasn't Christmas. They didn't call it Christmas. They called it they called it the Yule Festival or something.
Are you sure they didn't mention Christmas? Because they definitely mentioned Hanukkah. So they must have mentioned Christmas.
Well, there was some other
in one of the
Christmas
songs.
things. There was like a Christmas
It was like
tree,
holiday.
but then also
Right.
They had a shot of the Christmas tree, and then they had like hanging dreidels. Like they're very much like going out of their way to not.
Yeah,
I don't think the word Hanukkah was said, but they did have Jewish people.
One more example of the war against Christmas that happens every year. I take my kids to go see a movie about Dios de los Muertos, which is the Day of the Dead, where it's a Christian holiday, and there's the Frozen Yule adventure, whatever it is, and they don't even say Jesus is baby Jesus. They don't even talk about the baby Jesus.
So if you're going to go see that, you're going to go to hell. That's what you're going to do.
Boycott Olaf's Frozen adventure.
So that Frozen short, which rounded out to be like 21 minutes, was supposed to be
longer?
It was 21, 22. It was supposed to be a half-hour holiday special aired on ABC.
Okay.
Because you put commercials in there, perfect half hour.
Yeah.
It did not come to that. I don't know why, but they slapped it before COCO, and
nobody watches network television anymore, so they were like, let's put it on.
Yeah, we spent a lot of money on this, you guys.
Let's do it.
And
bad.
it was such a misfire. Like they crammed
my
all these like shitty songs into it. There's like 9 songs in this 21-minute short.
All forgettable.
Yeah, and it's just kind of, hey, don't forget about Frozen. Frozen's still a thing.
Coming in 2019, Frozen 2.
Right. They did it once before with a quick short about Elsa being sick on her birthday or something bullshit like that.
Yeah. I remember that.
But it was actually a short.
I think it was in front of a Disney movie though.
That's the thing, is that this was like the first time they combined the two animation studios, which I like to have a nice. I like for them to be separated, and it's becoming increasingly less. So.
Yeah, imagine they showed Frozen before Star Wars or Black Panther. You know,
yeah,
like,
anything that Disney owns is just like, we'll put a fucking throw.
It's like, please don't do that, Disney. Please.
But
don't.
I will. It's got to be a lot of the same audience. I get it.
Well, yeah.
Listen. I'm not happy about
you
this.
Right.
Like typically the shorts are under 10 minutes.
Right.
Yeah.
And I read, I think Slate, somebody wrote an article and was like, here's how late you can show up.
That's
to
perfect.
COCO.
Yeah.
And they were telling people how late you can show up. And it was 37 minutes
Yeah.
after the start time.
You will be fine and not miss a thing.
Yeah, I remember
Which
thinking
is
that. I remember
terrible.
looking at my watch. I was like, this was supposed to start at 4.
Yeah.
It is now 4:40.
Oh my God.
Jesus.
And they're just getting
and
to the movie.
They finished that short and they had their dumb, like 1 minute, like little thing where they talked about how great the animation is in their movie. And it's,
Oh, yeah.
it's just a bad choice in general to waste your audience's time before a movie that they paid to see.
Throw it at the end if you really need to do it.
I went to one of those Fathom like event
Yeah,
things,
yeah.
and I went to go see, there's a musical that I really like called Merrily We Roll Along, Stephen Sondheim musical. They were showing it in theaters, the revival of it for one night only, and I went to go watch it, and they showed like a 45-minute making of documentary before they showed the musical.
Not before.
And we were so close to leaving because it was just so painful. Because you're just like, why am I watching this right now? I paid to see something else, and now I'm just.
And it's not like they have a ticker in the corners, like only 15 minutes left. Like, no, it's like, God, like,
When is this gonna end?
Yeah, Kevin, who saw it with us, he was sitting next to me, and he turns to me and he's like, I don't think the stakes are very high in this. I'm gonna go get popcorn. He went, got popcorn, came back. And Olaf had just gotten lost in the forest, and he was like, I thought it was going to be over. It was
another 10
us
minutes.
too.
Yeah.
And he was like, well, I think I'm going to go get napkins because I forgot napkins. It was
So he had time to do all of that.
And I was like, I don't know, man, this could end at any moment. And then but by the time he came back, I was like, we're like in the middle, I think.
Yeah. Like there were some salvageable parts that were funny, but not worth it. They could have had a 4 or 5 minute funny little thing. But God,
honestly, that snowman was just obnoxious. I've never seen Frozen. I was going to watch Frozen eventually. This defined the moment at which I was never going to watch Frozen anymore because it was that bad. That short was, it just pissed me off.
And I'll talk about this again. Like Disney has their structure, and they're like, it's so meticulously calculated. Like, we have to do the throwback to the most iconic song,
right?
Where we're at the door because people are gonna get like teary because that's the saddest song in the movie, and like, it was just so meticulously structured. And then like the big things like, oh, he's looking for a Christmas tradition, and you're the tradition, Olaf. Like,
You wait all along.
Well,
you're talking about like watching all of these like pre-production stuff and documentary style things before the film also. That's you would never do that if you were going to watch any film or television show. You wouldn't throw on the audio commentary first and then watch the show later.
Yeah,
it's the same ass backwards concept.
If you make a little thing about the making of, put it on TV and as advertisement
or at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
And I will say,
or online.
It may have made me, because the thing was so it felt like it was like a factory made like Disney thing.
Paint by numbers.
Paint by numbers, and because of that, it may have made me a little bit more aware of the structure that was happening in COCO. I mean, just the fact that like when he gets into the land of the dead and he was like, oh, like De La Cruz is doing his sunrise like concert in the morning, and he's like, that's where his party is. I'm like, all right, we're gonna go to those places. There's gonna be a big ending thing at the Sunrise Festival in the morning. Like,
so
it like turned my mind on to how like what the structure and what the structures and formula.
You kind of saw the Matrix code of it.
When I was watching it, and to be clear here, we sat down, we watched some trailers, and then we watched the Frozen half-hour nonsense, and then we watched maybe 2 minutes of what it was like in producing COCO, and then we finally watched COCO.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. But the little 2-minute COCO thing, it may have also it may have also when I was watching, I was just thinking about it was showing a lot of the artistry, which was actually kind of cool. But it may have also just been we might have been more peeved because we just finished the Frozen thing.
That I think put a bad taste in our mouth. But
going into the movie, like you wanted us to
yeah.
be mad before we started watching Coco. Luckily, it was that good.
Yeah, Coco was a strong. It wasn't like Cars 3 or some bullshit. Like it was a really good Pixar film that I think it was not a waste of time. It is a good. I'm
funny.
I want to tell as many people as I can to see this movie. It is so good.
Do you have a grandma?
Yeah, hug your. If you have a living grandma, I don't have any anymore. Hug your damn grandma.
Yeah, it reminded me of my grandma.
Listen to her, and she's got stories. Listen to them stories.
If you know any Spanish, the word for frozen is con helado. So this movie should have been called Coco con helado because it was just. It was Coco plus Frozen film, attached at the hip.
I actually read that in Mexico they have stopped showing this short before Coco. That is a brilliant move.
It was a good move.
Yeah.
Good on you, Mexico.
They just don't put that reel on the projector.
Oh my
They
God.
just go right to the movie.
Yeah.
So I do want to, and somebody might know the answer to this. I thought a couple of times, and I obviously haven't had this issue with certain other movies that have been made that take place in other countries that are, and then the actors and the script is in English. But maybe it's because I live in New Mexico and I've spent my life around Spanish culture that like I almost wanted to see this movie in Spanish.
Yeah,
it felt
absolutely.
weird for them to be singing the songs and like singing the like Spanish lyrics. I'm like, this just
I was
sounds
thinking
wrong to
about
me.
that the whole time. Yeah, I was like, I wonder in Mexico when they're showing this.
I'm sure it must
It's
be.
it's all in
Yeah,
Spanish.
yeah.
Kevin was even wondering if they like had a different version of the animation where
The mouths line.
mouths.
Oh.
are
Yeah.
And I would assume probably yes.
It's also better music in Mexico. They just threw in actual.
Yeah.
Right.
They have a live band that
I mean,
plays.
and they had, you know,
come into
it's
the
kind of
theater.
interesting. They had a lot of Spanglish throughout the movie, so
Yes.
they're
A lot,
sort of
yeah.
assuming a lot about the audience that we all understand. You know, there's no subtitles for
Yeah.
anything. It's like we all understand what this
Yeah,
means.
New Mexico and California, they were okay watching
Yeah,
this.
muy
Right.
guapo. Huh? I was like, I know what that means.
Yeah, but I think that's interesting that you're assuming a lot about your audience that you're like, here you go, you know what this means.
But I also think that was a nice choice. Be
I
like, hey,
agree.
learn about it.
Yep,
like
it's like
we are
learn
we
another
are putting
language.
this culture in front of you. People maybe in Maine or Boston maybe not have that much connection to it, and they're like, this is a
It
representation
was a smart
of these people.
move instead of just making like just whiteifying it.
Right, like seeing a TV news anchor. It's like about the suspect's name was Miguel Montoya. It's like, stop it, Tina, stop it.
Tina.
I mean, I think I liked that choice
Yeah.
that they were like you're right, learn some Spanish. It's,
Yeah.
you know, like a large portion of our population in the United States is Hispanic, so you know, chances are you're going to come across Spanish at some point in your life here.
At
Or
Disneyland,
Latino.
they give the safety speech in English and in Spanish for all those little Cocos out there.
Oh,
This little Coco.
Those little Cocos.
oh, tear.
His name was Miguel.
I know.
I know, but the grandmother was
Coco was what's little.
I honestly
Mama
thought that was an
Coco.
interesting
She's
choice.
too old to ride the roller
It's
coaster.
I think it was really cute that he calls all of his grandmothers and great grandmothers mama.
Mama.
Mama?
That is a real thing.
Yeah.
I called my grandmother Mama Lily, and it's because I couldn't say abuelita when I was a kid, so I would say Lili for Lita, and then her nickname became Mama Lily.
It's such
cute.
a,
So.
I'm half Mexican, and I never met my Mexican grandparents, nor am I like super connected to my Latin side. But on my Japanese side, I call my grandmother mom. Not all the time, but yeah. My mom refers to her as mom, so I start calling her mom. Yeah. So the end of this film, I don't remember the scene before last, but I remember the last scene, which is him. Oh no! Is it the last scene where he's singing to his
No,
grandmother?
that's one of the last scenes. The last scene is when he's singing at his family gathering.
A year later,
Oh,
time
a year
passes.
later. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. I don't know that they needed.
Dead.
She is, and then the baby sister is born.
Embrace it, people.
I don't know that they needed the year later.
I think they did.
You think they did? Like they needed to have
I think it was a good tie up of everything. They showed that they accept Miguel for being a musician. Everyone can now come over the bridge into the living world.
I guess I get that, and I understand that it is a nice little tie, but I think because of how impactful the scene was, where it was him singing to his grandmother, that I could have left on that high. Instead, I left on a smile, which is what they want to do.
I also
get that.
remember it's a movie made for kids.
Yes, I get
and
that.
I also cried during that part too. Just the whole son of a bitch.
I didn't understand the logic completely because there was the one guy that we met who was in the hammock who disappeared because everybody forgot him. And he was like, I can take his picture back. I can remember him. And he was like, it doesn't work that way. But then, like, COCO was technically the only person who knew Hector in the real life.
Yeah.
But he was somehow, even after Coco's death.
Well, she hadn't completely forgotten him yet.
Right.
Was the thing.
When Miguel left the world of the dead, he was in the process of dissolving, or it seemed like he was about to go away.
And he reminded her of him again, but then she died later, and I was like...
Oh, he should have been gone.
That's what I was thinking. How is he still there?
Maybe it's because he remembers him now.
But he said specifically it doesn't work that way earlier in the movie.
I don't know.
That is a good point.
I don't know.
Well,
Get your shit together, Disney.
Yeah.
And maybe I don't know. I feel like him remembering him or knowing something about him was the reason why.
I
or
think
something.
that's probably something to do with your picture being put up or something.
Yeah, and I think maybe the thing with the guy in the hammock, who rest his soul, because
Nameless
Miguel
character.
met him as a dead person. Maybe that's the thing.
Right,
And
right.
the thing with Hector was that at the 1 year later, everyone knew that he was the author of all the De La Cruz songs.
That's what it was.
So he wouldn't be the only.
He was
so like,
remembered.
So like famous people in the land of the dead will live longer than normal people.
He's
because
trying
more
to be
people-
Frida Kahlo and
Right.
Which I thought was, by the way, really funny the way that they handled Frida Kahlo. Like
They
she's
skewered
just
Frida
so.
Kahlo,
I mean, it could have been done like a little more respectfully, but I did think it was pretty funny that like they just kind of showed her like doing these weird things with like her all over everything and like her coming out like little mini hers coming out of this like squash thing. And
She's
like,
an abstract artist, and I think it's
avocado or
okay
something.
to like poke some fun at abstract.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Because she's really
And the
abstract.
cactus, which is also me.
Because it's weird. It is not
I mean,
normal.
it is, but it's so good. I just love her and
Yeah.
all her work and stuff. So yeah.
So I loved it.
I give it an A.
I give it an A.
I give it an A,
And,
too.
A. Thumb for
Thumb
A.
for A.
Reminded me of my grandmother Margarita.
Where would you put this on Pixar
Reminded
scale
me
as
of
far
my
as other Pixar
grandmother,
films?
Isabella.
Oh.
Her name was Isabel, not Isabella, but
I think
I
it's
had to
interesting.
say it.
We all cried except for Kevin, no soul. No, that's what he was talking about earlier today and
He just
yesterday
doesn't cry.
too.
Oh, yeah,
he
he
doesn't
doesn't-
cry in film.
Oh God, I love to cry.
Me
I
too.
know. It was just like
Again.
it's hard not to for that film, but I was laughing. We were all crying, and then we walk out of the theater, and then you were like, it reminded me of my grandmother, and I thought you were joking because it's a Latin film and like we have Latin grandmothers.
doesn't matter-
Of
matter,
course-
though. It
of
can
course
remind
it
you of-
you guys connect to it in that way. I don't know why I thought that was so funny.
That's
though.
racist.
It is.
I had a very close connection to my grandmother. Yeah, we were most alike, probably of anybody in my family.
She was a cynic.
Yeah, and she just didn't care about things that other people cared about. Sweet.
Which is
Yeah,
awesome.
my grandmother. I thought about like the Alzheimer's aspect of it. Like Coco was, her brain was going away, and then there's also I've heard about in treating people with Alzheimer's, music is a very important way to get them back, because I always think
There's
of
a documentary about that.
about like using music from their time when they were a kid. Like in my great uncle, I visited once in a nursing home, and he was he was very forgetful. He asked me the same question like 3 times. I had like a band T-shirt on. I was like, what's that? What's that? But you ask him about the war, he'll take you back to certain days of the war because it like rolls back your memory.
Yeah.
You forget yesterday, you forget a month ago, you forget a year ago, but you can go back to when you were a kid. So I really liked how they used that song, something that was a huge part of her childhood.
Remember Me.
Yeah, and it brought her back, and she was like, it was like awake from a trance.
I like how Remember Me also, the way it was first introduced was like this arrogant guy singing Remember Me, and then he gets crushed by the bell, which I love that they brought it back and he gets crushed by the bell again. But then it's brought, I think Remember Me was done 3 times, and then the
right, because he sang it in the pit too, and that's when Miguel figured out, oh shit.
And then that was Remember Me for there, and then there was Remember Me at the very end, and just like it was really good. That was an interesting like callback 3 times. But yeah. Anything else we want to say before we wrap this up?
See it.
See it. Go watch.
Now that we've talked about
COCO.
it, if you're watching this, see it again.
Definitely go see it. It's very good.
Fantastico.
Bring the tissues.
That's not Spanish.
I would, but I mean, we don't need to draw this out. But you mentioned top 5. Like, where does it rank in Pixar?
Yeah,
it's got to be in my top 5. I don't know exactly what.
Sure. I know you got Incredibles up there.
Incredibles is number 1. One of the Toy Stories is in there too. Maybe Up.
I got Toy Story up there. I got A Bug's Life. I have Monsters Inc. You know, COCO is probably one of those top 5. Yeah.
For me, it's Up and this, and I don't know.
It was
Toy Story.
Really good Pixar.
I really like the Pixar movies that like are like super creative. If you don't know anything about me, like straightforward narratives, I tend to, I don't know, I discount your points if you write according to like the standard structure of screenplay.
Right.
And so I like WALL-E is my favorite.
Oh, WALL-E's so good. Yeah.
It's just I feel like, how did that movie get made? Like whenever I see that movie or think about that movie, it's like a movie that's main characters are 2 robots that never speak English, and there's very little dialogue, and it's this big space epic thing, and it's that's my favorite. I don't know. I guess Up is really good.
Where would you put COCO?
COCO is probably up there in the top 5. The Toy Stories I like, but they're never like, I don't know.
COCO, a top 5, not as good as WALL-E. Go watch it.
Ringing endorsement if I ever heard one.
Please tune in to twitch.tv/Color Circuit live every Sunday at 3 p.m. MST for Screen Source, and a new schedule every week. Rolling into season 2 next year for 2018. Bye-bye.
Bye. COCO.
COCO.
COCO.